Welcome to the Business Pavilion. I'm very pleased to be here today with you. I think today one of the big milestones has been the event this morning with the presidency where the VCMI was presented. And this is a really important moment. I read a post in LinkedIn that reflected very well the moment where we are. So these markets have been facing a lot of criticism in terms of their integrity. But there is a group of people that are extremely committed to bring that integrity to the market and to provide solutions that can be implementable by businesses. And ICVM and now VCMI work, it's a fundamental step in the right direction. We did have an event last year as well with ICVM and VCMI. And here VCMI today is going to present the results of the work and the next steps. Now, I work at Women Business, and our role is to mobilize business for climate action. And we encourage, obviously, companies to follow the mitigation hierarchy. First, decarbonize as much as you can, and then use flexible approaches. And we haven't given the rules of the game yet. And this is the start of those rules. There's much more work to be done. And I think we need to be nice with ourselves as well. Because I don't know, in this sector, I mean, this room looks quite smiley. But I was in an event once and I thought, like, what is going on? We're all friends or not, right? We need to make it work together. So we need to work SBTI, VCMI, ICVM, CDP, GHG protocol to provide a solution and the answers that the business community needs to make investments. Because the only thing we're interested is that we accelerate climate action and we do it today because we don't have time. And as our says, don't wait for too late. So don't wait for too late to use the VCMI, test it, provide your feedback, because we are in a journey where we are building the frameworks of the future, but we have to test them. We need to see that they work. And in that sense, I'm very proud to have partnered with VCMI and to help them as Women Business in this journey, together with the help that we're doing in trying to align the ecosystem so that we provide a coherent view to companies on what kind of investments can be done and where can they be included. So without further ado, I invite you, the wonderful chair of VCMI. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. My name is Rachel Kyte. I'm the co-chair of VCMI, and my co-chair, Tarja Gabassian, is on some very fancy stage with lots of very, very important people, including Dr. Sultan at the moment, talking about the contribution that voluntary carbon markets with integrity can make. I'm a co-chair of an amazing steering committee and a great, small but mighty staff led by Mark Kember, and they're here. And we wouldn't be where we are today without their hard work, but also without the participation of more than 150 different companies and organisations around the world who've put extraordinary amounts of time and effort into the writing of a claims code, a code of practice for the private sector when using voluntary carbon markets, so that those carbon markets have integrity, so that we can both remove and reduce emissions on the kind of time frame that we need to, and that the resources and the revenues that generates can reach into the kinds of projects that need to be financed now, not in 5 or 7 years' time. So this is a big event for us because it's 1 year since we gathered in Sharm el-Sheikh, where we were, at a process of still refining and working with all of you on what that code of conduct, code of practice would look like. I don't think I need to explain to this audience why a market with integrity matters, but you can see here and you can feel here, lots of pressure for low integrity deals to be done. And I just think that we have to remember that at the end of the day, we have to remove and reduce emissions. And anything else that isn't doing that is just simply sort of moving money around. And it isn't actually driving towards the results we want. I'm now very nervous because royalty has just walked into the room. Well, if the US did royalty, but they threw it out a few years ago. But now they wish they had it, but there you go. So I'm off message. Okay, back to integrity. Is this being live streamed? Maybe I want to edit that bit. Basically, the theory of change is for a company, and a large part of what we're doing is making it easier for leading companies to lead. So a company needs to have a transition. It needs to know how it's going to get to net zero. It needs to be able to reach a target. It needs to have that target validated. And after it's reduced and removed, then there is guardrails now with our code of practice about when it can enter into the voluntary carbon market with the assurance that this will be of integrity. Our sister organisation, ICVCM, has created the carbon credit principles, which give you the advice and guidance that you need on accessing the kinds of principle-based credits that will again assure you the integrity that you need. So the purpose of integrity is to drive revenue to the places where it's needed. And that's why it's been so important for us to consult with and work with rights holders all the way through this process. Because, what we've seen in the past is that many of the transactions have produced revenue, but it hasn't got to where it's needed. So with all of that, earlier this week, we put out the code of practice together with a monitoring, reporting and assurance framework and the branding that makes very clear the carbon integrity claims you can make depending on how you are. Oh, is it up there on the screen? Thank you very much, Cheryl, thank you. So get onto the website and look at it, because the clarity now, the branding helps with the clarity about what you need to do in order to be able to use which claim, I think is very clear. And all three claims, platinum, gold and silver, are integrity claims. They are driving us to the results that we want. We've heard a lot from climate leading companies in the last 2 years, really, through this whole process, about how difficult it is for them to use the voluntary carbon market with the levels of uncertainty that they felt were there in the past. So this work was really important. And at the end, the basic message here is that integrity will build confidence, confidence will build scale, scale will build confidence, and so we should start to be able to grow the market. We, of course, commissioned lots of research as well, together with others, to show that companies that have targets and that are trying to decarbonise, if they can use the markets, they will do more. They are not the problem. And it will be interesting for us to sort of help the 6,000 companies that are involved in SBTI in one way or another to move forward more quickly and invest now, because that's what we need. Otherwise, the transition starts to stall. And that's very different from then putting our sights on the millions of companies who either haven't or can't get themselves to a place where they've got a science-based target or with a transition pathway. So there's a huge job to help the vast majority of companies in the world to get onto this conveyor belt. And there's a huge job to do to help countries put in place the mechanisms that they need in order to be able to manage compliance markets, Article 6 markets and VCMs. So in the middle of all of that, we've issued the code of practice, but we also issued on the 28th, in order to incentivise more corporate action now, a Scope 3 flexibility claim. Now, this allows companies who are struggling to manage their Scope 3 emissions, which is the vast majority of SBTI. So this is the leaders of the leaders are having a hard time managing their Scope 3 emissions. This allows them to, for up to 50% of their emissions for a time-bound period, be able to use the VCMs, but they can't make the claim of being platinum, gold, or silver. But this is a way to get companies up. As we all know, the ethos of business is continual improvement. And we've got to take leading companies through the continual improvement while we work on the others to get them even onto the first rung of the ladder. We couldn't have done it without all of you. This is a critical juncture. We now need companies to use the code. We need the feedback on the flexibility of the Scope 3 as well, because that's a beta mode. We've issued it now. We will take the feedback and fiddle with it and then sort of issue a final one next year. We've also got much more research to do, listening to the market about where you need help and what you need help with. We're hearing from some companies that they'd like to think through what Scope 2 really means as well. For some industries, Scope 2 is a problem as well. What I'm really pleased to see is this sort of soup to nuts, end-to-end integrity from ICVCM to VCMI on the buy and the sell side, working with targets, working also then with the corporate accountability organisations, looking at how transition pathways are being thought about, looking at the idea that transition pathways for different sectors of industry will have to be different, and maybe they have to be treated differently within a voluntary carbon market as well. All of these things are fundamental building blocks of a high integrity market. But I can stand here in confidence today and say that if companies start using this code of practice, that this will start a ball rolling, right? And this will have a snowball effect. So in a remarkable period of 2 years, we've gone from nothing. I stood in Glasgow with Greta on one end of the room and Mark Carney on the other, and everybody else in the middle screaming, to a 2-year period of extraordinary collaboration to get to where we are today. Now we need to start using this framework and these guardrails. Then we need to start seeing what results from it. And we will start to see all kinds of innovation on the sell side, all kinds of innovation from companies. And if we can give good companies the reason to invest now rather than sit on their hands, which is what is doing, we can speed the transformation. If we speed the transformation, we build confidence. If we build confidence, we can see even more innovation. So, wouldn't be here without all of you. Thank you very much. And I think some key speakers are not here yet. And so I'm going to hand over to a panel. Is that correct? I'm looking for guidance from the back. Okay, so there's going to be a panel. I'm getting no guidance, so I'm going to make it up. So I think we should bring to the front Tim Christopherson, Fernanda Faccini, Emma Stewart. Are you all here? Excellent. Is that right? So I'm going to continue to stand up because if I sit down, I might fall off that chair. So this group is an extraordinary group of corporate leaders, early adopters, really at the forefront of pushing us and pushing everybody else to professionalise the governance of this voluntary market. So my first question is to Tim. So why did you engage? I mean, be nice, right? But why did you engage with VCMI? And I mean, what role do high integrity markets play for you, a huge company?
So thank you, Rachel, and hi everybody. I'm a forester by training, so forgive the forest metaphors now. I feel a little bit we're one of the last few big trees standing in the forest together with others in the voluntary carbon market forest, if you will. And we believe that we will get through this, that we will definitely together have success. And I want to thank the VCMI, but also the ICVCM, We Mean Business, not only for the guidance and the recent claims code of practice, but also for the unity. It is so important that you stand together and not say one thing to us here and then another thing in the next room. Corporates want clarity. And I only joined the private sector a year and a half ago after 15 years in the UN, but one thing I understand is that it's risk and reward. Those are the two things that motivate the private sector. And we flipped the risk and reward ratio for participating in the VCM. And when you do that, you stall participation. That's as easy as that. And I think the scrutiny on the VCM was very useful. It was actually great to get the bad stuff out. But we cannot let our skepticism flip into cynicism, which is what I've seen, and I've seen that also in many companies. When I now go to them and say, where do you invest outside of your value chain, outside of your emission reductions? They say, wow, I don't invest. It's all BS, right? And no, it's not. There's so many good work being done out there that we have to finance, and we have to finance it now. And for a couple of reasons that have nothing to do with net zero, that might be one of the reasons. But another reason is we have to invest R&D money now for bigger things to come, because this will be a multi-billion-dollar, in the case of nature conservation and restoration market. And the V will probably drop away from the CM at some point in different forms. And there will be massive amounts of money that are needed and will be invested. So we need to prepare for that, and we need to prepare for that now with all the good ideas we have. I'm not going to go through, and I'm closing here, Rachel, but I'm not going to go through all the commitments that Salesforce has made, but we have made, for example, one commitment to buy 1 million tons of high-quality blue carbon. And when we made that, we quickly found out you couldn't go to the store and buy it, right? So there was no blue carbon of high quality. So we first developed high quality blue carbon principles and guidance together with Aura and others. And then we took another step back and launched this morning the Global Mangrove Breakthrough, which is an effort of now 50 companies, 30 NGOs, 20 governments to conserve and restore an additional 15 million hectares of mangroves. It's a $4 billion collective effort. The VCM plays a tiny role in that. Mostly it's domestic infrastructure money that will be spent. But as Sanjayan from CI said this morning, $4 billion sounds like a lot to people working conservation, but it's the price of 8 Emirates A380 airplanes that are on the runway here. So let's not kid ourselves that we have to invest this kind of money in the billions, and that will come. So we have to get ready for that. We have to get ready for that now.
No, great. Thank you very much, and thanks for Salesforce's commitment over the last few years, getting us to this point. So one other company that's been right down in the nitty-gritty and helping the market get where it is Netflix. So Emma, why
is this what the nitty-gritty feels like?
How will an integrity and integrity claims help drive corporate action, do you think?
I work at a storytelling company, so I feel obligated to tell you a story. At the turn of the century, when I entered the corporate sustainability space, it was called corporate social responsibility. Sustainability was not a term that we had invented yet. Everything was about the moral imperative. The business case was still very murky. Fast forward to 2008, I go in-house at a large software company, and I looked at how other companies were setting their climate targets, and I realized most of them were set by the marketing department or the capital budgeting department. So it is essentially what looked good on paper or what they had already planned to do. So instead, a co-author and I spent a year translating the IPCC science into what an individual company's fair share of the global carbon budget would look like. That became one of the first science-based targets. We donated that into the Commons, and that became the Science Based Target Initiative. The question I was constantly asking myself at the time was, is it better or is it enough? Okay, so now SBT's kind of standard practice, it's better. But what the IPCC science tells us is that it's not enough from any individual company's standpoint. So to meet our SBT, we have modeled it all the way out through 2030. We know precisely which levers we need to pull. It's around energy efficiency, renewable energy, including fuels, clean mobile power, get rid of those pesky generators that right now power every movie and film you've ever seen on Netflix and every other studio, and decarbonize our transportation fleet. So we're charting progress against that SBT every year. But if you read what is very clear in the scientific journals, as well as what the IEA and the IPCC show, it's that this decade, we also have to destroy methane or prevent its release in the first place, and protect nature, which has been stabilizing the climate since long before humans came along. So that's why we decided, on top of our decarbonization target, to also commit to neutralize every single annual emission, scopes 1 through 3, starting last year. And we hit that target last year. We will hit it again this year. It's really about revitalizing those 3 R's that we all grew up with: reduce, remove, recycle. This is now reduce, remove, retain. Right? We have to strengthen the world's existing carbon sinks, and many of those are in the natural world.
Thank you very much. Well, so from Netflix to Natura, So I've known Natura since the beginning of my sort of career working on business and sustainability, because IFC invested in Natura, not with our own money, but with somebody else's money. It was too risky for IFC back in the day, 20, 23, 22 years ago, and watched this extraordinary company flourish ever since. So you've got a long history in voluntary carbon markets in the past, but what does integrity mean for you going forward?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. I'm based in Brazil, so I'm sorry for my English. I think it's better than to speak in Portuguese for you. In this journey, we learned a lot. Brazil, for us as Brazilian or Latin America, the deforestation is an important topic related. So our business is based on natural and biodiverse ingredients. So we have tried to invest in projects in the Amazon forest, in nature-based solutions. So for us, as you see in the newspaper, it's very important to integrate this council to guarantee that we are practicing good. We are having good practices, and we have an enormous potential working with nature-based solutions credits to avoid the deforestation, especially in the Amazon region. So I think it will be good, and in my opinion, it's important to have a Latin America point of view in this discussion, because all the standards and all the things that we are working related to the carbon markets are based in the north of the planet. So it's important for us to have our opinion, the vision, the specificities of the Latin America countries and everything related to the forests.
Thank you so much, Fernanda. Sam? Bain? Dale? See, no, just what am I doing? I know you're the Dale. So Bain joined the Early Adopters Programme, and you've been really driving unity and cohesion in the voluntary carbon market space, especially through the role you've been playing at the World Economic Forum, so thank you. But why is this so important, and how do you see, I mean, for Bain, given what you do, why is this so important to you?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, sort of here today, more representing Bain's own efforts and how we use the carbon market and other sort of offsets as part of our own sort of decarbonization journey. And Bain has really been kind of using the markets and sort of investing for more than a decade, perhaps quietly sort of chipping away, just sort of continually sort of, investing there sort of year by year as we look to kind of mitigate our own sort of emissions. Clearly, as a professional services firm, it is a different sort of challenge for us than for many of the other sort of corporates in the room, and that we're dealing with emissions in the hundreds of thousands of tons rather than millions. But nonetheless, even for us, we have, been on sort of a journey and continually sort of, pushed to increase those sort of standards and push that sort of forward. And as, I think Tim sort of mentioned, companies ultimately at the end of the day need to be able to manage their risk and reward. And in order to do that, companies want to know what are the ground rules, where are the boundaries, and how can we move forward. And as we've sort of, I think, been through the journey over the last sort of few years, as those rules have been ambiguous, it has been, I think, very difficult for sort of companies to go forward. And if we reflect on, what has sort of happened in terms of the progress over the last sort of 12 months, despite all of the volatility that's taken the headlines, many have been building and laying that sort of foundation to allow us to go forward. And really, I think now as we kind of look to the future, we feel, quite excited that clarity is there and able to learn from our sort of own experience and sort of, pushing the envelope, but also hopefully take the lessons from that to companies as well and move that forward.
Thanks very much, Dale. So from Bain to BCG, Paulina. So another firm with clients all over the world, and you've obviously played a very big, important role in COP28 as well. And I don't think the argument has been answered here yet about integrity in carbon markets. There's plenty of people here putting pressure on just scale before integrity. But how important is this, do you think, for your clients? And how do you think the integrity claims could have an impact on making an integrity market grow?
Yeah. It's incredibly important. I think of the work that VCMI is doing as making sure that we get quality demand in addition to quality supply for carbon markets. And I mean, BCG is very similar to our clients. We want to do the right thing. We want to get a return for investment. And we actually want to take on risk to scale the solutions that we need and to learn and make sure that the finance that is needed for both nature and engineered solutions is there. So what VCMI is doing is making sure that companies can actually participate in the right way, and I hope more importantly can talk about it. Because once we can start talking about it much more, we can share the lessons of what's working and what's not, without ending up in John Oliver's show, which no company wants. And this is how we learn and how we scale, and at the end of the day, get the finance for the solutions that we need.
Thank you very much. So I think we can open it up for Q&A. I'm looking to the back of the room for guidance about whether anybody else has arrived yet. But so the floor's open for questions to the amazing panel. Please, and say who you are as well, because we'd like to know. Yeah, I'll bring the mic over to you. I'm going to do a Liddy doll for anybody that can remember that far back.
Thank you. I'm Elena Marro from the European University Institute based in Florence. So I have a question about government role in the VCM. So considering that the VCMI is meta-governance but still private-led initiative, what do you think that the role of state regulation should be to support the integrity on both the demand and supply side of the VCM?
Who wants to answer that? Okay, you want to take more questions? Any more questions? No, you have to answer that one. No, I mean, I'll just tell you from VCMI's point of view, then I'll take to is that the UK came out and endorsed ICVCM VCMI today, and we have very important meetings in Brussels in early January about how this all fits together. So I think that governments are looking at this. Do you want to go for it?
I didn't bring my PR or legal team. I'm a one-person delegation at COP, so I will have to say this is my personal opinion. I wish that governments had raised the carbon tax 20 years ago and regulated their way out of this. It hasn't happened. And I'm not a big fan of the VCM. It's great to have it because we have nothing else right now. And as long as that's the case, we need, as a last but not later option, in climate action for any big corporate, we need investments. You need to reduce and invest. If you only do one of the two, you're doing something wrong. If you only reduce, you're doing not enough. If you only invest, that's even worse. You need to reduce and invest. And remember also that we're in a crisis and we're acting as if it's business as usual. Imagine COVID-19 with business as usual. No social distancing, no investments in vaccines. That's the situation we're in. And that's where governments now have to move forward. When I said earlier that the V will drop from the VCM at some point, of course, there will have to be more regulation, and that's coming. Cap and trade in Brazil, there's a lot of regulation that's coming, which is a good thing. But we cannot wait for anything anymore. We have to invest right now. And the difference for a company like ours to have this guidance and be able to claim a reward as a climate leader or not is whether I get to spend $15 million a year on good climate solutions or not. And it's as simple as that. There's no other metric for me that counts. And of course, we have to roll with the development of this market. And if it becomes more regulated, which would be great to a degree, of course, then we will welcome that, but we will not wait for that.
Great. Yes, thanks. Hi, everybody. Laura Drucker from Ceres. So something I've been thinking a lot about with all of these discussions is there's really kind of two sets of companies. There's companies that have to do real systemic transformation of their own operations, electric power, transportation, ag. And then there's companies like everyone on the stage where if those transformations don't happen, you all won't meet your goals either. And so I really think there's a huge role for the carbon markets and increased investment, but I worry about opening the floodgates for some of the companies that need to focus on these transformations themselves. And I wonder if you all have any suggestions or thoughts on how to deal with that. The other second part is like maybe what's the role of B2B support, but also B2B advocacy in some of these situations?
Yeah, sure. I'll start with that. So I think this takes us back to carbon price in some ways. If you have set an internal carbon price, or if a carbon price is mandated, then the solutions that are economically efficient are the ones that companies can implement, regardless of the sector. Like, I'll just give the example of BCG. We've set an $80 a ton price. We know that we can do that. We're stepping up and driving the solutions that way. But I think you need that across to inform, are you going to be focused on reducing what you need with the technology that is available now, or are you going to try to rely on the market as well? And of course, scope 3 and value chain collaboration and collaboration across within your sector and the ecosystem is essential, because we can't do it alone. I think what's inspiring is that we're seeing more and more of that happen, and I hope that at the end of the day, concerns about collusion don't get in the way, because I see hints of that coming up.
Yes, I'd like to add something. For us, Scope 3 is almost 46% of our emissions. So we are working hard with our value chain to influence our suppliers to be with us and to influence cross sectors, because we are working in the institutions in Brazil, in Latin America, to influence them, to know more about this topic and to work with us. We are working like a collaborative model to guarantee that we will implement the solutions that is necessary. Brazil is already passing through these discussions of regulations. We are working for 16 years with the voluntary carbon markets, but we are working hard to guarantee that we are influencing the whole value chain and helping our competitors to be with us in this journey.
And maybe just one build. I do think you raise a very valid concern, right? If we open the floodgates and make it much sort of easier for sort of companies to potentially use offsets, does that mean they're not going to drive the investments in mitigation and the hierarchy that we all know? But that said, sorry, just one point. The evidence, I think, shows the counter, right? Which is the companies who are very serious about scaling up activity in this market are also the companies that are doing many, many other things. They're not looking for a backdoor to get out of it.
Are those ones that need to be serious?
Yeah, okay, so let's just take one more question. We'll come back and
But Rachel, you might want to clarify what the claims code requires, which is an SBT is the floor.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that haven't said the floor is still not achievable for a lot of people.
Yeah, which is why I think there's work to be done on Scope 2. But there's also, whether for certain sectors, Scope 2 is something that we need to look at in terms of what that would mean. And then I think that the other piece of this is that as you see the work on transition pathways building out, and this kind of work that Mission Possible Partnership's doing and others, then I think you start to get a real sense of what does best-in-class performance look like for refining, and then I think we can have a real conversation about, well, what would a responsible use of the voluntary carbon markets look like? But we're not quite there yet, and I think we've made a big breakthrough in the last 2 years between sort of the purity test and the sort of Wild West, right? And we're starting to build that centre ground because of all of you, and so now we have to get into the really nitty-gritty issues of how do you speed the transition in steel, in cement, in energy generation, blah 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 blah, and that's hard, right? And we've got it, and then let's get into agriculture and really complicated things. So, but that's where I think we're headed. Over here.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Anna Lerner. I'm the CEO of Climate Collective. First of all, very grateful for all of your and organizations for doing what you do internally, but also kind of the leadership that you're showing to support sort of this beyond mitigation action across the market. I moderated a session yesterday on operationalizing Article 6, and we talked a little bit with Microsoft and NASDAQ around what are the implications for corporates' procurement or corporates' engagement with the voluntary carbon market, particularly around the aspects of corresponding adjustments. There are two completely different accounting frameworks, obviously, that we're dealing with. And bridging them, I don't think anyone is going to try to do. But is there something that you're considering when you are engaging with the VCM? And if so, is there something that ICVCM or VCMI or someone else needs to provide clarity on so that there's still confidence amongst corporate to keep doing these investments, even though there, I would say, maybe policy uncertainty around that aspect?
We have voluntary carbon market royalty in the house. Kelly Kazia.
Hi. Just going to backseat drive a little bit. The ICVCM and the VCMI actually have a joint continuous improvement work program on the topic of corresponding adjustments, because Article 6 does not answer the question about whether or not a corresponding adjustment, more specifically, whether or not a host country has to authorize a carbon credit when it's going to be used for voluntary purposes. It's pretty clear that if it's going to be used for compliance purposes towards an NDC, towards a CORSIA target, that it does need to be authorized, and any authorized credit must be associated with a corresponding adjustment. I think it's a pretty open question, and there's a lot of ways to look at it when it comes to voluntary uses. And right now we're all really in the world of radical transparency. So right now what we are requiring is that authorized credits are tagged as such, while we take a little bit more time to really investigate and analyze the role of corresponding adjustments where carbon credits are used for voluntary purposes. And it's a joint work program between the two.
If you buy Kelly a drink, she'll talk about it for another hour. Who has another question? More questions? I thought there were more questions. Go for it.
My question, Terry Slavin from Ethical Corporation magazine. I put the same question this morning to another panel about whether the Guardian article actually has done a favor in some ways in terms of bringing about that radical transparency in response.
Recovering forester, what do you want to say?
Transparency is, of course, always useful, and there are many markets that are imperfect, and it's always good to uncover if there's anything that's going wrong. That's in some ways that's a normal market adjustment mechanism. In this case, of course, there was an overall lack of guidance and regulation, and that's now being retrofitted, and the screws are being tightened on integrity and quality of supply. So I would say yes, it was painful but useful, and. I think the earlier point I made about not letting skepticism turn into cynicism is the key point, because we all need to remain skeptical, because when I read in the newspaper that what we bought was, or what others bought as well, was worthless, the person that is most concerned about that is, myself and our procurement and so this is, companies hate to waste money, and of course then in that case it was useful. There's a lot more nuance to the case, and I'm not going to go into that because there are always many sides to the story, but the short answer is yes, and we have to move on with greater determination, greater clarity and speed, and more companies need to reduce and invest and do that now.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that. I think those articles are bringing attention to greenwashing, but I think it's really important to actually decouple that. There's misleading, and then there's having a plan or failing to have a plan for what your target is. There's failing to actually get to the target because you actually took the risk and tried but failed, and you want to learn and grow. And so I really hope that in the future we can actually be a little bit more specific when we're saying a company's doing greenwashing, because nobody wants any company to be misleading, but I don't think we want to paralyze companies from setting an ambition, setting a target, working towards it, even if they don't know exactly how they're going to get there. And I think that's part of that balanced approach that you're promoting.
So I'm going to hand over to Francisco Souza in a minute, who's joined us from the FSC Indigenous Foundation. He's the managing director there, and he will close us out. But I just, in response to that question as well, I think one of the lessons that we took away, certainly Annette Nazareth from ICVCM and myself and Tarje, my co-chair from VCMI, is that this is a market, and so we have to professionalise the governance of the market. And I don't think any longer you can be involved in every piece of the market and not have a conflict. And so, the people validating should be different from the people crediting. So I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to professionalise the governance of the market now, and that's something that we're doing with the support of, the extraordinarily sort of ambitious funders that we have as well. So this is all in the voluntary space, but at the end of the day, we hope that this is a glide path to effectively regulated and managed markets by every government. We've got to get there. And what I've been pleased to see is in the negotiations, which are going tortuously slowly, right? But there is when it goes that bad, that slow, people are like, wait, what are we missing here? And of course, what we're missing is government action on effective pricing of carbon. And so if that we can take away from here, that would also be useful. So, Francisco, there you go, sir. Thank you very much. Here's the microphone. You can stand here. Mucho gusto. Encantado.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the WMB Coalition, VCMI, for the invitation. Just a correction. I'm no longer a managing director for the FSSA Indigenous Foundation. I'm here as a board member of the IVCM. I'm part of the Apurina indigenous people, but my language, we call my people Popucari. Popucari means human being. I'm from the Brazilian Amazon, from the jungle, close to Peru and Bolivia. For me to come here from my village, I spent 4 days. I'm here together with the nature, because the nature, the jungle, the forest, everything from my territory is part of my life. I'm here with the nature. But at the same time, my intention here is to say to you that I'm very happy to see that you are trying, you are giving your hands for us to think about long-term solution for the crisis of the planet. But at the same time, I want to say to you that you are alone, you are going to fail. In my religion, ancestral religion, we have an entity that we call Tisura. Tisura is the beginning of everything. Everyone here came from the same thing, came from the same source. That means that the risk that you are facing on the planet nowadays is the risk that everyone is going to face. Everyone should be together in the same boat to overcome the crisis. The goals for me here in 3 minutes, I think I just have 1 minute and a half, is to come together with your hands for us to think about possible solutions to overcome the crisis. But the crisis that you are facing on the planet nowadays is not easy. The solution should have a scale, and the solution should come with speed. If you don't have that, we are going to fail. Speed and scale is going to be very important. But together with speed and scale, we should have high integrity. If for us to achieve high integrity, it's important to bring together the indigenous peoples in local community. That's why I say at the beginning that I'm here to bring together with your hands for us to think about solution, to think solution in scale and speed. Now, what we need to achieve that? That's the point that I now want to be very pragmatic in 1 minute. We should come together the supply, the demand at this moment. So I'm going to talk to you about indigenous people local community VCMI forum that we have intention to establish. To bring the indigenous people to be part of the solution, to see the VCM as part of the solution for us. What we need to supply the demand. we are going to establish a forum for indigenous people, as I say before. The forum does not have father. I prefer don't think in terms of the father and mother. In my community, actually, we just think about the mother, because the mother is the source for everything. And then I would say that the mothers for the forum come together, the VCMI, think in terms of the demand, VCM as part of the supply, as the mothers for the forum. If the forum has an intention to bring together indigenous as the ancestral shareholders of the nature, together with the business sectors to start to scale up solution, and also to think about finance as a way to speed the solution. So the objective of the forum that we are proposing is, again, to put together the demand, the supply, for us to achieve together the high integrity, but at the same time to bring indigenous people as the partners of the solution. To make sure that the ancestral knowledge and the rights of the indigenous people is part of the implementation of the VCM for us to achieve together the high integrity which will be extremely necessary at this stage. So the objective of the forum that we want to create is first to contribute to the climate objectives of the Paris Agreement, and at the same time to implement mechanisms for safeguard the rights of the indigenous people in local community, and connected to the VCM. The second objective is to strengthen the contribution and leadership of the indigenous people in local community in the high integrity VCM. Some outcome that we want to achieve is to unify the indigenous people in local community as part of this conversation, the dialogue, but to give the indigenous people in local community as the ancestral shareholders of the nature, you think in terms of the solution, to give them the opportunity to co-lead. Through the forum, we do have expectation to bring together different stakeholders, to think together with the business sectors, the government, and other potential actors to be part of the implementation of the forum. So the organization that we have, again, we have the VCMI, the IVCM is the mothers, but we do have expectation also to create a more large coalition. That's the ambition, the outcome, the final outcome from my view as an indigenous person, again, from the jungle, is the fact that we do have, with this possibility, the great opportunity to bring together the managers, the directors, the shareholders of the nature manage 25% of the planet. If you bring together, then we are going to achieve the solution. And then we are going to protect the 80% of the biodiversity that we have nowadays, and also to protect the other ecosystem, including carbon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And it was such an important note to end on. And thank you for your leadership and for taking 4 days to get here. Muito obrigado. Can we give a round of applause to the amazing panel? I'm now going to evict you because we're going to show a little video. So if you want to find somewhere to sit or just move the chairs to the side. So we're going to call this session to an end. We're going to acknowledge Gina McCarthy's incredible leadership of public service. Thank you, Gina. And we're just going to show an animated video, and then we can huddle outside and discuss how to take the voluntary carbon markets forward. Thank you very much. The video.
It is proven and widely accepted that we must cut emissions drastically by 2030. The private sector has a huge role to play in achieving this. Companies must take responsibility and reduce all of their emissions in line with the latest science. To address remaining emissions, they should utilise every tool at their disposal, including carbon credits to finance technology, climate and nature projects. There are key organisations working together to help every company succeed on this journey. Companies should work out where their emissions are coming from and measure them and report them. Then set their science-based emissions reduction targets and have them validated. Companies must do everything they can to reduce their reliance on fossil-fueled energy use and all other emissions from their activities and value chain. But as they work to scale up climate solutions, not all emissions can be immediately cut. Should these emissions be ignored while we wait for technology and policy to catch up? No, there isn't time. A new high-integrity chapter for using carbon credits has begun, bringing guidance that will instill confidence. Companies should take responsibility for all their remaining emissions using verified carbon credits as part of their pathway to net zero. The Voluntary Carbon Markets Integrity Initiative provides the rulebook on how companies can use carbon credits transparently and what they can claim about their use to avoid greenwashing. To ensure that carbon credits used by companies are high quality, the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market is working to help identify high-integrity carbon credits that reduce and remove emissions by channeling finance to projects that restore nature and remove carbon from the atmosphere. Companies need to push governments to do more and incentivise action, unlocking private finance and deliver greater mitigation actions. Companies must provide transparency, demonstrated through annual disclosure and continuously tracking their progress. Companies are at different stages of the same journey, but more action is needed now. More companies need to follow these steps. Governments have a role to play by incentivising good climate action. Together, we can protect our climate and ensure a secure and stable future.
So I think you're happy to sort of gather around outside and chew the fat with the panel and the staff of VCMI, Women Business. Thank you very much for your commitment. Thank you very much for being here. Lots of work ahead. Thank you.